My ex invited me to her wedding, then asked me to stop it. My ex-girlfriend invited me to her wedding 5 years after she broke my heart. I almost threw the invitation away. We hadn't spoken since the breakup. Not once. No birthday messages. No holiday greetings. Nothing. Then suddenly, I was invited to watch her marry another man. I told myself I wasn't going. Then I found the handwritten note tucked behind the invitation. It said, "Daniel, I know I have no right to ask this, but please come. I think I may need you. Asterisk asterisk." That should have been enough for me to stay home. Instead, I went. And less than 10 minutes before she was supposed to say, "I do," her maid of honor pulled me out of my seat and rushed me into the building. Emily was waiting for me in a hallway. Wedding dress. Barefoot. Mascara running down her face. She grabbed my arm and said, "Daniel, I need you to stop the wedding." I stared at her. "You invited your ex-boyfriend here to stop you from marrying someone else?" She shook her head. "No." Then she handed me her phone. There was a photograph on the screen. Her fiancé, Thomas, was standing across the street from the apartment Emily and I used to share. The photo had been taken 7 years earlier. 3 years before Emily claims she ever met him. I asked the obvious question. "How long has he been watching you?" Emily looked at me. Then she said, "I don't think he was watching me." She swiped to the next picture. It was me, walking toward my car, taken from across the street. And just like that, I stopped caring about the wedding. Because apparently, the man my ex was about to marry had known who I was long before either of us knew who he was. My name is Daniel. I'm 34 now. Emily and I met when we were 23. We were together for almost 6 years. We were one of those couples everyone assumed would eventually get married. Our families were close. We had a dog, shared an apartment, talked about children, had a running joke about what we would name them. I had even started saving for an engagement ring. Then one Thursday night, Emily ended everything. No warning. No big fight. She came home from work, sat across from me at our kitchen table, and said, "I can't do this anymore." I thought she meant the argument we'd had the previous night about dishes. I actually laughed. Then I saw her face. "What do you mean? I don't know if I want this life." "What life?" "This." She looked around the apartment. "You, me, marriage, a house, kids." I felt like I'd missed several chapters of my own relationship. 2 weeks earlier, she had sent me a listing for a house she loved. A month earlier, she had joked about what kind of engagement ring she wanted. Now she was telling me she didn't know if she wanted any of it. I asked if there was someone else. No. Had I done something? No. Had she stopped loving me? She cried and said, "I don't know." That became her answer to everything. I don't know. 3 days later, she moved out. A month after that, she blocked me everywhere. She said she needed a complete break. So I gave her one. The next year was awful. I went to work, came home, walked our dog, Milo, repeated. Every time my phone rang, some stupid part of me hoped it was Emily. It never was. Eventually, I stopped waiting. I got promoted, moved to another part of the city, bought a small house, started dating again. I had one serious relationship that lasted about a year. It ended peacefully. By 33, I was single again and actually okay. Then Emily's wedding invitation arrived. The groom was named Thomas Bennett. I looked him up. I'm not proud of that. But come on. He was 36. Worked in financial consulting. Apparently, he volunteered for several charities and ran half marathons. He looked like the kind of man who owned matching luggage. I hated him immediately for no reason. Then I hated myself for caring. I showed the invitation to my friend Marcus. He looked at the handwritten note. Absolutely not. What? You are not going. Why? Because this is insane. Maybe she wants closure. You haven't spoken in 5 years. Exactly. Marcus stared at me. You still love her? No. He kept staring. Not like that. That's not a convincing answer. I RSVP'd yes. Marcus called me an idiot. He wasn't wrong. The wedding was held at a vineyard 2 hours outside the city. It was huge. Flowers everywhere. String quartet. Open bar. The sort of wedding where even the napkins looked expensive. I arrived early because I wanted to disappear into the crowd before anyone noticed me. That plan failed immediately. Emily's mother saw me. Linda rushed over and hugged me. A real hug. Not polite. Not awkward. She held on for several seconds. I didn't know if you'd come. Neither did I. Her eyes were wet. That made me uncomfortable. Then her husband, Richard, approached. He shook my hand. Good to see you, son. He froze. Daniel. Sorry. I hadn't heard him call me son in 5 years. Something about that hit harder than expected. Then Linda said, "Thank you for doing this." I frowned. Doing what? She opened her mouth. Richard touched her elbow. She stopped. "For coming," she said quickly. That was weird. I asked whether everything was okay. Richard smiled. Wedding nerves. Then they left. I should have followed up. Instead, I went to the bar. A few minutes later, someone said my name. I turned. Sophie, Emily's best friend and maid of honor. I'd known her when Emily and I were together. She hugged me, then stepped back and looked me over. You actually came. Everybody keeps saying that. Sophie glanced toward the building. Did Emily tell you why? There it was again. Why would there be a reason? Sophie froze, then smiled too quickly. No reason. That was terrible. What? That lie. She looked around, then lowered her voice. I can't talk about this. You approached me. I know. What is happening? Just stay. That's not reassuring. Please. Then she walked away. At that point, I seriously considered leaving. I actually went back to my car. I sat behind the wheel for maybe 5 minutes. Then I saw Emily's handwritten note sitting on the passenger seat. I think I may need you. I went back. The ceremony started 40 minutes later. I sat near the back. Thomas stood near the altar. That was the first time I'd seen him in person. He was exactly how he looked online. Tall, calm, perfect suit, expensive watch, everything polished. Then something strange happened. Thomas turned toward the guests. His eyes moved across the crowd, then stopped on me. He knew exactly who I was. His expression changed. Not surprise, recognition, then irritation. He immediately turned toward his best man and whispered something. The best man looked back at me too. That didn't feel good. Then Emily appeared. Everyone stood. She walked down the aisle with her father. She looked beautiful. I know that's cliché, but she did. For a few seconds, I forgot everything weird about the day. Then she looked toward the back, saw me, and stopped. Actually stopped walking. Her father leaned toward her and whispered. She started moving again, but she didn't smile after that. I remember thinking, you asked me to come. Why do you look terrified that I did? Emily reached the altar. The officiant started speaking. Maybe 3 minutes later, Sophie stepped away from the bridal party. She walked fast toward the back. People noticed. She crouched beside me. Come with me. What? Emily needs you. She's literally getting married. Not yet. My stomach dropped. What's going on? Please. I followed her. We went through the main building, down a hallway. Emily was waiting outside the bridal suite, still wearing her dress. Her shoes were gone. She looked like she'd been crying. Sophie closed the door behind us. Emily looked at me. For 5 years, I'd imagine what I might say if I ever saw her again. Maybe I'd be cold. Maybe funny. Maybe I'd ask why she left. Instead, all I managed was, hi. She laughed once through tears. Hi. Then she said, I need you to stop the wedding. I thought she meant emotionally, like she was panicking and needed someone familiar. No. Her face changed. No. You don't get to invite me here after 5 years and ask me to ruin your wedding because you're nervous. Daniel, if you don't want to marry him, don't. You don't understand. Then explain. She pulled out her phone, opened the photograph. Thomas outside our old apartment. 7 years ago. I stared at it. How? I found it on his laptop. When? Last night. And you're telling me now? I didn't know what to do. She swiped. More pictures. Our old building. The coffee shop Emily worked at. My car. The park where I used to run. Our dog. Then photographs of me. Not social media pictures. Surveillance-type photos. Taken from across streets. Through windows. From parking lots. My stomach tightened. How many? Hundreds. What did Thomas say? I haven't asked. Why? Because there are folders. She showed me. One was labeled Emily. Another. Daniel. Another. Obstacle. Guess which one was mine? Inside were photographs. Addresses. Social media screenshots. My old work schedule. A picture of my parents' house. Then a document. Emily opened it. The title was Separation Plan. The date made my blood run cold. It was created 5 years earlier. 3 months before Emily left me. What is this? Emily swiped down. Screenshots of anonymous emails. I recognized some immediately, because those emails had almost destroyed our relationship. About 6 months before our breakup, Emily started getting anonymous messages. She never told me how many. I only knew about a few. Someone claimed I was cheating. One email had a picture of me having lunch with a woman from work. Natalie. Married. 2 kids. Nothing remotely romantic between us. I explained. Emily said she believed me. Then another anonymous message arrived. It claimed I was planning to leave. Another claimed I was hiding money. That one caused our biggest argument. Emily found a savings account I hadn't told her about. There was almost $10,000 inside. She asked why I was hiding money. I said, I can't tell you. The truth? I was buying an engagement ring. I had also been setting money aside for a proposal trip. I thought saying anything would ruin the surprise. Emily thought I was preparing to leave. I remember her crying. I remember telling her, you have to trust me. Now, standing in that wedding hallway 5 years later, I saw an old screenshot of the anonymous message that had sent her searching for that account. It said, he's putting money aside because he's leaving. Check before he moves it. Asterisk asterisk. I stared at Emily. You left me because of this. She looked down. I didn't know what was real anymore. You never told me that. I was ashamed. You told me you didn't want our life. I thought you were lying about everything. You didn't even give me a chance. I know. My anger came back fast. 5 years of believing she simply stopped loving me. And all along, someone had been feeding her lies. Then I saw another document on Thomas's laptop. A note. 1 sentence. She won't leave him until she believes leaving was her idea. I read it twice. Emily whispered. Daniel. He broke us up. She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Then I asked the question that made no sense. If Thomas wanted you, why didn't he date you after we broke up? Emily nodded. Exactly. Thomas didn't enter her life until 3 years later. At a charity fundraiser. He introduced himself. They talked. He asked her out. According to Emily, there had been no contact before that. So why spend months destroying our relationship? Then wait 3 years. I asked if she'd found anything explaining that. She said no. Then she told me something else. 6 months before the wedding, someone started messaging her anonymously. Different number every time. The first message said, before you marry Thomas, invite Daniel. Another, Daniel deserves to see how this ends. Another, if Daniel isn't there, you'll never know who you're marrying. I stared at her. That's why you invited me? Yes. You followed instructions from an anonymous stalker? I know how it sounds. It sounds insane. I tried blocking them. They kept changing numbers. Why didn't you call me? She laughed sadly. And say what? Hi, Daniel. Sorry I destroyed your life 5 years ago, but someone thinks you should come to my wedding. Honestly, that would have been useful. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. New message. Emily opened it. Asked Daniel about May 14th, 2018. She looked at me. What happened May 14th? I froze. My brother died. Emily's face changed. Alex. Yes. My younger brother Alex died in a car accident. 26 years old. He lost control on a rural road and hit a concrete barrier. At least, that's what we'd always believed. Another message arrived. Thomas was there. I grabbed the phone from Emily. What the hell? She started crying again. I called Marcus. He answered immediately. Please tell me you didn't stop the wedding. Do you remember Alex's accident? Silence. Yeah. Was there another car? I don't know. Was there a witness? Marcus thought. I think so. Who? I don't remember. Can you find out? Daniel, what is going on? Please. He agreed. Then Sophie rushed into the hallway. Thomas is looking for Emily. Emily panicked. Tell him I'm sick. He doesn't believe me. Then we heard footsteps. Emily whispered. What do I do? I looked at the photographs again. Get Sophie. Lock yourselves in the bridal suite. What about you? I want to talk to him. No. You asked me to stop the wedding. I asked you to stop it, not get yourself killed. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Sophie took Emily away. I walked toward the main hall. Thomas appeared around the corner. We stopped maybe 15 feet apart. He smiled. Not warmly. Daniel, you know who I am. Emily told me about you. That's interesting. He frowned. Why? Because apparently you knew who I was years before she ever mentioned me. His face changed. Small, but enough. I continued. Why do you have photographs of me? He said nothing. Why did you send anonymous emails to Emily? Still nothing. Why did you label me obstacle? His eyes moved toward the bridal suite. Where is Emily? Answer me. Move. I didn't. Were you there when my brother died? That stopped him. His entire body went rigid. I knew. I didn't know what I knew, but I knew something. What happened to Alex? Thomas lowered his voice. This isn't the place. That's your answer? Daniel. What happened? He looked around. Guests were beginning to gather near the doorway. Then he said quietly, your brother wasn't supposed to be driving. I felt cold. What? He took your car. I suddenly remembered. Alex's car had been at the mechanic. He borrowed mine. How do you know that? Thomas realized his mistake. Too late. You were following my car. He turned. I grabbed his jacket. What did you do? He pulled away. Don't touch me. You were following him because you thought he was me. Thomas looked furious. Then Marcus called. I answered. Daniel. His voice sounded wrong. I found the report. Witness. Yes. Name. He hesitated. Thomas Bennett. I looked directly at Thomas. He heard. Emily appeared behind me. She must have left the bridal suite. Thomas saw her. Everything about his face changed. Emily, please. She shook her head. Were you following Daniel's car the day Alex died? It wasn't like that. I laughed. There it was again. The phrase everyone uses right before explaining exactly what it looks like. Emily asked again. Thomas finally said yes. The crowd near us went silent. He had followed my car. He thought I was driving. Why? Thomas looked at me, then asked, do you remember Robert Bennett? The name meant almost nothing. Then it clicked. My father's former business partner. When I was a teenager, my father owned a construction company with Robert Bennett. The business collapsed after money went missing. My father accused Robert. They went to court. My father won. Robert lost almost everything. A few years later, Robert died. Thomas was his son. You've been stalking me because of our fathers? Thomas's eyes filled with tears. Your father destroyed mine. My father caught him stealing. He didn't steal. The court disagreed. The court was wrong. Emily stared at him. What does any of this have to do with me? Thomas looked at her, then said, you were supposed to be temporary. I swear the entire hallway went silent. Emily whispered. What? Thomas started explaining. He blamed my family for his father's downfall. He began following me years later. At first, he said he only wanted to know whether my family had suffered. Then he saw Emily, saw our apartment, saw photographs of us, saw how happy I looked. He wanted to take something from me, something I couldn't replace with money. So he targeted Emily. He watched, collected information, photographed me around women, created anonymous accounts, fed Emily carefully selected truths mixed with lies. He didn't want to directly contact her romantically. He wanted her to leave me without knowing anyone had pushed her. And after she left, I asked. I stopped. Why? Because I'd done what I wanted. Emily looked physically ill. So when you met me later, that wasn't planned. She laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe that? Thomas insisted the charity event was a coincidence. 3 years after our breakup, he saw Emily there. She didn't recognize him. He said he intended to leave. Then she spoke to him. They connected. And Thomas did the one thing that made this whole story even stranger. He actually fell in love with her. Emily looked disgusted. You destroyed my relationship as revenge and then decided you loved me? I know how it sounds. No, I don't think you do. Then I asked about Alex. Thomas stopped talking. I moved closer. What happened? He admitted he followed my car that day because he'd planned to confront me. He wanted me to know what he'd done. Maybe scare me. Maybe finally explain why. Alex noticed a car following him. He sped up. Thomas followed. On a narrow two-lane road, Thomas tried pulling alongside. Alex swerved. Lost control. Hit the barrier. Thomas stopped. Called emergency services. Then lied to police. He said he had been several vehicles behind and only witnessed the crash. You killed him. Thomas shook his head violently. No. You chased him. I didn't touch his car. You caused it. It was an accident. You thought he was me. Silence. That was worse. Emily whispered. If Daniel had been driving? Thomas didn't answer. Emily repeated it. What were you going to do if it was Daniel? Thomas looked at me. I don't know. Police later cared a lot about that answer. But at the wedding, everything became chaos. Someone had already called 911. Guests were recording. Thomas's mother arrived from the ceremony space. Her name was Margaret. She pushed through the crowd. Thomas looked at her. Then something in his face changed. You. Margaret started crying. Emily looked between them. Thomas pointed toward his mother. She sent the messages. Margaret didn't deny it. Emily's anonymous source was Thomas's own mother. Margaret explained that Thomas left an old phone at her house several months earlier. She turned it on because she wanted to find a photograph of her late husband. Instead, she found old folders. Pictures of me. Pictures of Emily. Police reports. Anonymous email drafts. She confronted Thomas. He admitted everything. Not immediately, but enough. Margaret told him he had to tell Emily before the wedding. He refused. He said he had changed. That whatever he did years ago had nothing to do with who he was now. Margaret tried to believe him. For months. Then the invitations went out. She couldn't take it anymore. So she anonymously contacted Emily. Why didn't you just tell her? I asked. Margaret looked ashamed. Because he's my son. That sentence explained everything. She wanted the truth exposed, but didn't want to be the one exposing him. So she created clues. Pushed Emily toward the files. Told her to invite me. Then I realized something. Why May 14th? Margaret looked at Thomas. Because I found the police report. The report had Thomas's name. She searched news articles. Found Alex's obituary. Then found me. She put the timeline together. Thomas shouted at her. You had no right. Margaret stared at him. No right. Her voice shook. You spent years blaming Daniel for what happened to your father. Then you helped kill his brother. It was an accident. And you lied. Thomas said nothing. She continued. You've spent your entire adult life saying your father was destroyed because someone lied about him. Then she pointed toward him. And you became exactly what you claimed destroyed him. That hit him. You could see it. Then police arrived. Thomas was taken aside. So were Emily and I. The wedding became a crime scene. Guests were interviewed. Videos were collected. Thomas's laptop was seized. So was his phone. I spent the night answering questions instead of watching my ex get married. Not exactly how I expected the day to go, but somehow, that still wasn't the biggest twist. 3 days later, a detective called me. He wanted to speak privately. I went to the station. He put an old file on the table. Not Alex's. Robert Bennett's. Thomas's father. Remember how Thomas claimed my father destroyed Robert by falsely accusing him of stealing? The detective had found something while reviewing the old case. Something Thomas apparently never knew. Robert had confessed. Not publicly. Privately. Before he died, Robert wrote a letter to his wife, Margaret. In it, he admitted taking money from the company. A lot of money. He had a gambling problem. My father hadn't framed him. He hadn't destroyed an innocent man. Robert had done exactly what he was accused of doing. Margaret knew. For years. I stared at the detective. Thomas doesn't know? According to Margaret, no. Why didn't she tell him? She thought she was protecting the memory of his father. I laughed. Of course. Another parent protecting a child with a lie. That lie had grown into revenge. That revenge destroyed my relationship. Then helped kill my brother. All because Thomas spent half his life avenging a father who had actually been guilty. I asked if I could see the letter. The detective read part of it. Robert wrote that he was ashamed. He knew his son blamed my father. He wanted Margaret to tell Thomas the truth someday. She never did. Thomas had built his entire identity around the wrong story. The police confronted him with it. According to the detective, Thomas initially refused to believe it. Then Margaret confirmed it. He broke down. But knowing the truth did not erase what he'd done. The investigation into Alex's death was reopened. There was no physical contact between the cars, so the legal case was complicated. But Thomas had admitted to following and attempting to pull alongside Alex. He had also lied during the original investigation. Police recovered old messages and location data that supported parts of his confession. There were also witnesses from the wedding. Lots of them. Thomas eventually accepted a plea deal involving charges related to reckless conduct, false statements, stalking, and harassment. He served time. Not as much as my family wanted. Probably more than he expected. But honestly, prison wasn't the part that mattered most to me. My parents finally learned the truth about Alex. My father had blamed himself for years. He was the one who let Alex borrow my car. He kept saying, if I hadn't given him the keys. My mother blamed Alex for driving too fast. I blamed random bad luck. None of us knew another driver had been pursuing him. Learning that didn't heal anything. But it changed something. At least Alex wasn't just a cautionary story about one bad decision anymore. Emily and I barely spoke during the first month after the wedding. Not because we were angry. Because there was too much. Thomas. Alex. Our breakup. The anonymous emails. The fact that our relationship had been deliberately manipulated. People kept assuming Emily and I would immediately get back together. Even Sophie joked. Well, technically the original groom is available. I didn't laugh. Okay, I laughed a little. But getting back together wasn't simple. I was angry with Emily. That's the part people don't like hearing. She had been manipulated. I understood that. But she still left without giving me the truth. She believed anonymous strangers over the man she'd spent 6 years with. Maybe I would have done the same under enough pressure. I don't know. But understanding something doesn't erase the damage. 3 weeks after the wedding, Emily came to my house. She hadn't been there before. She stood on the porch and looked around. This is weird. What? I saw pictures of this house on Thomas's laptop. That ruined the mood immediately. We sat outside. Emily apologized. Really apologized. Not just for leaving. For refusing to tell me why. She explained that the messages had happened gradually. One believable detail at a time. Thomas knew where I was. Who I was with. When I came home, he sometimes told Emily things before I had the chance. Then when I explained honestly, my version looked rehearsed. He had manufactured coincidence after coincidence until I looked like the liar. The hidden savings account was what finally broke her. I asked you what the money was for. I remember. You smiled. I was buying a ring. I know that now. She started crying. I thought you were smiling because you knew I couldn't prove anything. That hurt. Emily continued. There was one email that said you were going to leave me right after our anniversary. I remembered our anniversary. I had booked a weekend away. I planned to propose. Emily dumped me 4 days before it. We sat quietly for a while. Then she said, if Thomas hadn't done this. Don't. She stopped. I can't think about that. I do. I know. She looked at me. Do you hate me? No. Do you forgive me? I don't know. She nodded. Fair answer. We stayed in contact because of the court case. At first, only practical things. Court dates. Detective updates. Then normal things slipped in. How's Milo? My dog. He was ancient by then. Still alive out of pure spite. Emily came to see him. Milo remembered her immediately. That almost destroyed both of us. He started crying. Not literally. He's a dog. But he made that whining noise and climbed halfway into her lap. Emily buried her face in his fur. I walked into the kitchen because I didn't want her seeing me cry. After that, we started having coffee occasionally. No romance. Not at first. We talked about the years apart. Emily had dated 2 people before Thomas. I had dated 2. She asked why my serious relationship ended. I told her. I asked whether Thomas ever showed warning signs. She said yes. That surprised me. What? He hated when I changed plans. That's it. No. She looked embarrassed. He always knew where I was. I stared at her. You didn't think that was weird? I thought he was attentive. Apparently, Thomas remembered everything. Restaurant reservations. Appointments. Coworkers' names. Routes she took. At first, it felt romantic. After discovering the surveillance files, Emily realized some of what she thought was attentiveness had been information gathering. That messed with her badly. She stopped using social media, changed numbers, moved apartments. She had panic attacks when unfamiliar cars stayed behind her too long. I stopped thinking of Thomas as simply the man who ruined our relationship. He had damaged Emily too. We became friends again, very slowly. Then Milo died. He was 14. I called Emily before I even consciously decided to. She came over. We sat on the floor beside his bed. He died with both of us there. Afterward, Emily stayed. We drank cheap wine, talked about our first apartment, Milo destroying a couch cushion, the time he ate half a birthday cake. At some point, Emily rested her head on my shoulder. Neither of us moved. Then she kissed me. Once. Soft. Quick. Then immediately pulled away. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. She stood up. I shouldn't have done that. Emily. No. She grabbed her coat. I don't want us doing this because we're grieving. That was probably the healthiest decision either of us had made in years. She left. We didn't speak for almost 2 months. Then I received a birthday card. Inside, Emily wrote, I miss my friend. If that's all we can be, I want that. Asterisk asterisk. I called her. We became friends again. Actually friends. For almost a year. Then Emily started dating someone. His name was Aaron. Nice guy. Teacher. I met him once. I hated him. Not because he did anything wrong. Because apparently, I wasn't as evolved as I thought. Emily noticed. Are you jealous? No. You're terrible at lying. I admitted it. She asked what I wanted. I said, I don't know. She laughed. That's familiar. I deserve that. Emily ended things with Aaron a few months later. Not because of me. At least, she said not because of me. Then one night, almost 2 years after the wedding, she asked me to dinner. Just us. Halfway through, she said, I want to try something. What? One date. I stared at her. We've had dinner like 20 times. No. She shook her head. A date. I didn't answer. She continued. I don't want the old relationship back. Good. I don't want us pretending none of this happened. Also good. I want to know whether the people we are now actually like each other. That made sense. So we went on a date. It was terrible. Painfully awkward. We had spent so long avoiding romantic tension that suddenly acknowledging it made us act like teenagers. I talked too much. Emily spilled wine. At one point, we started discussing Thomas. Then Alex. Then both of us got depressed. I drove her home and said, well, that was awful. She laughed. Completely. Second date. Obviously, the second was better. The third was fun. The fourth ended with a kiss that neither of us apologized for. We took everything slowly. No moving in. No engagement conversations. No, we wasted 5 years. Nonsense. Those years happened. They changed us. We couldn't erase them. Eventually, Emily moved into my house. The same house Thomas had photographed. That bothered her at first. Then one afternoon, she found the old wedding invitation in a drawer. Her invitation. The one that started everything. She held it up. You kept this. I forgot it was there. Liar. Fine. Maybe I kept it. She sat beside me. Do you ever think about how insane this is? Constantly. I invited you to marry another man. You have terrible boundaries. She laughed. Then she became quiet. Daniel. Yeah. Do you think we would have stayed together if none of this happened? I had thought about that question for years. This time, I answered honestly. Maybe. She looked surprised. That's it. Maybe we would have gotten married. Maybe we'd have divorced. Maybe we'd have 3 kids. Maybe we'd hate each other. Romantic. I'm serious. I took her hand. I don't want the life Thomas stole. She looked confused. I want this one. That made her cry, which felt unfair because then I cried too. A year later, I proposed. Not dramatically. No vineyard. No photographer hiding behind a tree. We were making dinner. Emily was complaining because I had bought the wrong pasta. I pulled the ring out of the junk drawer. She stared at me. You kept an engagement ring in the junk drawer? I learned not to hide proposal money. She laughed so hard she sat down. Then I asked. She said yes. We got married 6 months ago. Small ceremony. 32 people. Marcus was my best man. Sophie was Emily's maid of honor again. She said, I am begging both of you to actually finish the ceremony this time. We did. Margaret wasn't invited. Not because I hate her. I don't. But Emily didn't want any connection to Thomas at our wedding. Margaret sent a letter. She apologized again. She also sent me something. Robert's original confession letter. The one where he admitted stealing from my father's company. She said, I kept this hidden because I thought I was protecting my son from hating his father. Instead, I gave him a reason to hate an innocent family. I keep that letter in a safe. Not because I enjoy it. Because it reminds me how much damage one lie can do when everyone around it keeps protecting it. Thomas eventually got out. I know because the district attorney notified my family. He's not allowed to contact me or Emily. He moved away. I don't know where. I don't want to know. But there was one final thing I didn't learn until after Emily and I got engaged. Sophie told us. She had known about the anonymous messages before the wedding. Not everything, but some. Emily had shown her. Sophie was the one who convinced Emily to invite me. That surprised me. You? She nodded. Why? Because whoever was messaging her knew too much. Sophie said she suspected Thomas long before Emily did. She thought he was controlling. She once caught him reading Emily's phone while she was asleep. When Sophie confronted him, he said he was checking something for the wedding. She never believed him. Then, about a month before the ceremony, Thomas cornered Sophie at a party. He asked, Do you still talk to Daniel? She said no. Thomas replied, Good. That sentence stayed with her. So when the anonymous messages said to invite me, Sophie pushed Emily to do it. I looked at her. You could have warned me. I didn't know what I was warning you about. Fair. Then Sophie smiled. Also, if I called and said your ex's creepy fiancé might be stalking you, would you have believed me? No. Exactly. So technically, Emily invited me. Margaret sent the messages. But Sophie was the reason I actually ended up in that seat. 3 women accidentally coordinated one of the strangest wedding interventions imaginable, and none of them knew the entire truth. Sometimes people ask what I felt when Emily asked me to stop her wedding. Honestly, for about half a second, I thought she was going to tell me she still loved me. Part of me wanted that. I imagined standing up during the ceremony. Some dramatic movie moment. Then she showed me those photographs. And suddenly, whether she still loved me became the least important thing happening. My ex invited me to her wedding because an anonymous stranger told her to. Her maid of honor dragged me out of the ceremony because she suspected the groom. The groom had spent years blaming me for something my father never did. He manipulated Emily into leaving me, then accidentally helped cause my brother's death while following a car he thought I was driving. Years later, he met Emily again and convinced himself the past no longer mattered. His own mother finally exposed him because she could no longer watch him marry a woman who didn't know who he really was. And underneath all of it was another secret. Thomas's father had actually been guilty. The revenge that destroyed several lives had been built on a lie his own family could have corrected decades earlier. I went to that wedding expecting awkward small talk and expensive wine. Instead, the bride asked me to stop the ceremony. The groom was arrested months later. My brother's death was reinvestigated. And 2 years after the wedding that never happened, Emily and I went on the worst first date of our lives. Somehow we kept going. And yes, eventually, my ex did get married. Just not to the man waiting for her at the altar that day. She married the guy sitting in the back row, who almost didn't show up.